I'm going to demonstrate building this closure actuator here for the shoe bottle, the perfume shoe bottle. I have another tutorial on actually built the bottle itself, this purple part in the front, which is the glass bottle. So this is just the tutorial on this actuator in the back. I'm not building any of the mechanics or the finish or how all this fits together. I'm just building these objects for rendering purposes and for volumetrics to see how it's going to work in a carton. So this is the back piece here. It's made out of these two parts. I'm going to build this all at one part and then trim that apart. So let's go to the surfaces. And I think I have everything set up here. All right, so these are all the parts that we're working with. So this is all of that was for building the glass bottle. So we're just going to focus on these parts over here. Let's get this lined up. So to start with, this back actuator is coming right off of the back of the bottle. So we need to start with this surface here. Let's go into shaded. So this surface right here on top is where this actuator is going to come from. So we're going to start with that. That's a nice flat surface, so we can work with that. So I just extracted that and put that up here. And now I need to create the curved surface at the top here and at the bottom. So it's sort of this oval surface that blends into this other flat surface that we have on the front. So we need to start to look at that from the front view. So we have this curve and it's basically being traced right off of the, let's go to rendered. So I'm just tracing it right off of the image. We got this curve at the top, and then we have this curve here at the bottom. It's a little bit curvier down there. So I basically traced those with some line work with our tools. And that's where these other arcs are going to come from. So I'll show you what that looks like in perspective. So starting with that, then we'll know the arc of that surface, and it goes straight across to the other side. There's no compound curves there. Let's come up here. And that's where these come from. So I created these arcs by tracing them. And then I just put them apart and then just lofted that and made that a surface. So with that surface, I need to trim this curve out of that. Now that curve, I'm designing it. I'm just making that up and I'm trying to make it blend to the rest of the shape as best I can. So we have this curve up here on the top, and that's going to represent the top of that. But I'm going to trim that, use that to trim that extruded surface that I have. And then we have the one at the bottom. So again, that takes a little bit of back and forth. I'm working with those and making sure that it's going to line up. So I'm actually going tangent from this surface. I'm using this as a guide. So I'm creating that curve from this point to that point. And then I'm doing the same thing with this one down here from this point to that point. And then I'm going to loft these surfaces together to create this part. I am building these in this vertical orientation here. And then I'm going to trim that out of the curve, and then I'm going to rotate that into position. So you can see here, here's the top surface that I made from these curves. And I trimmed it with this curve to create that. And I started experimenting with leaving that as a surface and then lofting it. It didn't do it well. For some reason, things weren't lining up nicely. So when that does happen, what we can do is break it down into simpler parts. So what I did was I took this curve after I trimmed it out of here, and I just cut it in half. I took this line right down the middle and just trimmed that in half. So now I have this half, and I did that at the bottom too. So I had these two halves, and I have that surface. So I have those three surfaces. And I put those into position and then used that to create a network of curves to create the surface, which I'm going to show next. So this is pretty straightforward. We've done a lot of this. We're creating surfaces and we're trimming it with lines. So the curved surface trimmed with the arc, I get that subtle little curve that I'm going to need for this to blend in with the other surfaces. All right, so I hope all that's clear. So I took those and I brought that over here. So this surface I took right from the glass bottle that I have not touched. I'm just carrying that over. This one, I know I built this vertically. So what I did was I put it in front of the picture again, and I just rotated it back so it lines up with the picture from the front view. And then I did that down here with these. So these two, and of course this, if we look at that from the front view, and let's go back to wireframe. So I have that over here. So here that is. And this is just coming from the picture. So the only piece of information that I don't have is this curve back here. So that's just a 3-point curve. I just traced that from the picture as accurately as I can. And I snapped to the center point down here and snapped to here and just created that arc. And all of that came from tracing the picture down here. So now I'm ready to actually build this part. So this way I can build these, I'm going to build these surfaces on one half and then just mirror it over. It's going to help maintain this accuracy. A lot of it's a judgment call, and sometimes we can use this as a complete surface and extrude and do other things, and it works out well. But this particular situation, it worked best if I break these in half. So now I'm going to go to our surface tools, and I'm going to use the network. This time I'm going to select the curves right here without moving it before I move them over. But I'm going to select it right here and make it work right here. So let's see, surface from network. It's this little curved mesh thing. So I'm going to select that. So now I don't have to use my shift key to select these sources. So what these lines. So what I'm going to do is it knows that I'm looking for lines. So it's not going to select the surface. It's just going to select that source. So we're doing this networking. I'm not going to shift, and all I have to do is come down here, select that one, and I want this edge, and I want that edge. So I have two vertical lines, and then I have these two that are sort of horizontal. So those are the 4 lines. So I should be able to enter. Say okay. And has now created that beautiful surface that blends between those surfaces. That looks good. That looks great. So then what we need to do is just select these. I'm going to select this one also. This one, I can do this a couple of ways. Let's see, I'll do this from the top view. So I'm just going to mirror that over. And I'm going to mirror, and I'm going to go up to copy, yes. I don't really need ortho, but I'm going to make sure I snap right down here to the middle and just snap that over. And I'm going to make sure I snap to another point right here. And we should be in pretty good shape. Perspective. I'm just looking at this back edge, make sure it's not coming to a point. It's the downside by breaking this into 2 surfaces that this might not be tangent. No, that looks good. Okay, because it is a bit of an odd shape there. Okay, so that looks good. So I'm just going to undo that so I can have that. Okay, so that brings us down to here. And same thing, I just mirrored that over. And then once I have all of those together, I select everything, and then I use this join tool. So by using the join tool, I have now brought all those together, and they're all locking in nicely. And if I go to my properties, it tells us it's a closed solid poly surface. So it's a solid shape. So now I can trim into this and do things with this, and it'll be a solid. So that's the basic shape that we're going to start with. So now I took that and I put that over to another layer. So I'm going to go to my solids layer. And I have this set up here. So this is the part that I brought over. So what I need to do is create these trimming surfaces. So again, went back to the drawing, the picture of the photographs. I'm going to look at these from the front view. Where are they? And I traced from the photograph of the product, I traced these edges and what they're going to look like. So it's just this edge here, and then I traced that. I did that with the line tools. I'm not going to get too involved with the line tools because we've done this many times. So we should be pretty good working with these line tools. So all I really did was create these basic lines. I drew this line, drew that line, and then drew that line. And then I used the connect with curve tool. So I just sort of picked radiuses, then I created that nice radius, which gave me the tangents between those lines. And then this, I just used the spline tool to create this curve. I just traced that as best I could. And I'm just going to use these to slice right through that solid object. So again, with these, I took these, separated them apart, mirrored them on center. So all we have to do is select those, and we can go to our loft tool, which is not that one here. So it just creates this kind of a loft surface. And I did it with both of them. So I'm just going to leave that there. And that's how I created these over here. And then we just put them in position. If you notice, I have a radius on the top here. I didn't talk about that. This radius right across this top edge, I did that on this part, and I did it on the bottle. So I want that to line up perfectly. It's a pretty tight radius, but it does help when we do our rendering. It'll catch light. If we just had a really crisp edge there with no radius, it wouldn't look as realistic. So I just put a small radius on there so it'll catch the light. There are radiuses on these other surfaces, but I'm going to leave that for now. It might not look as realistic, but it'll be really very accurate. So I'm just going to leave that for this point, and I'll show what the difference of that is later on. So now with these surfaces in position, we can cut these and separate these. So what I'm going to do now, since we have a solid shape here, this is solid, and these are surfaces. But what that allows me to do is go into our Boolean operations, which is under our solid tools. In the solid tools, we have these first ones up here in the front, Boolean union, and we have difference, and we have intersection, and then we have split. We're going to use the split tool. This is our polysurface to split. So we're going to select this object and enter. And we're going to use this surface back here. Enter. So what that did, you can see the black line was just created. So we took this object that we had just built, and we cut it with this object, but we have the two remaining pieces intact. Intact being this front one here, which is the button, and then the one in the back. And it also created a surface, and I'll show you that. So these are closed poly surfaces. So that's a good thing. We will do that again to remove this part here, and then I'm just going to delete that part. So we'll use the Boolean split again. Select that. I'm going to select the button part, enter, and then I'm going to select this surface here and enter, and it now has cut that. So what I'm going to do is just remove these so we can see what we have. This part of the button we don't need. So you can see I still have my lines from when I created my surface. We really don't need those here. So there are the two parts. And by doing with this operation here, we're able to maintain our solid, our closed poly surfaces. So this is great. So we can go back in there and radius those edges. So with these parts like this, I'll just show without radiusing those corners, go into rendered, we really can't see the edges of the parts. So we need to put some radiusing on those edges so we can see the two different parts, which is kind of a realistic scenario anyhow. So let's do that by going back into shaded. Go to the front view and move that part over. I was going to keep ortho on. I'm going to move it straight over. So we take a look at our parts. Let's get rid of these lines here. It's going to be a little confusing. And I'll go back into perspective. So like I mentioned, I'm just building these solid shapes just for aesthetic reasons. I don't have any of the inner workings and the pump and the actuator and the springs and all that stuff. This is just the aesthetic housing of what this is going to look like. All right, so we need to radius these edges, or fillet in this case. So let's go to the command fillet. So this we've done before, so this should be pretty straightforward. I'm going to select edge. Oh, I don't need to use shift or anything. I can just select these edges right here. I could do the edges over here also, but let's just do this one at a time to keep this a little less confusing. So I want to put a radius on those edges. Now, the intersections of these planes do vary. Like this little intersection down here is a little bit sharper than up here, and then the transition on the side here is a little different. So if that does become a problem, excuse me, we can radius these things differently. It takes a little bit more time, and I'm going to try to do this all at the same time. So I'm going to press enter, and it starts to show me what this is going to look like. I'm going to link the handles, say yes. I'm going to try to do a radius that works for everything. So let's try. I'm going to select just one of the handles because I have it all linked. I'm going to pick this one right here, and I'm going to take a look at what that's going to look like up in here. Now, I really don't remember exactly what I did. See, that's 50. That's going to be pretty sharp right there. I might have done like 30. Don't really remember. Let's try 40. 40 thousandths. Enter. Enter. All right, not bad. I got a fillet tool. Edge. And I think it's just two locations here. Enter. Link should still be activated. It's going to pick one of these handles. That's not too confusing. I'll take this one here. I will just do the same thing. 0.04. Enter twice. Enter, enter. All right, that looks a little too big. All right, that gives us the idea. And then the same thing with this other part on the outside. So then all we really need to do is once we get the ideal radiusing situation, I'm going to go back to the front view. I have ortho in position. All I'm going to do is just move this back in here. Just kind of get that to sit where it was. Those radiuses are a little bit too big on the button part. It's not bad. So let's just take a look at that in perspective. It's a little bit tighter. View rendered. So now we can see that edge. It really looks like that button is sitting in there. All right, so that's what I did. Well, there's one more detail. I just built this little oval shape here. That's sort of where the actual spray comes out. So that's just doing a Boolean operation. Boolean, and we'll do difference. So you select this object first, enter, and then we select this part, and it basically just difference that in there to show where that spray part is. So that's really it for that part. Like I mentioned, my radius is here a little less. I probably did 30 thousandths, a little bit tighter there. And I obviously radius where the finger goes. So that's it in building that part. So here I have this beautiful blend here. It's like too perfect. So there should be some radiusing in here also, like at the glass bottle and between the actuators. So I'll probably do that at the last phase when I do a rendering of this to get that to look a little bit more realistic. So here I'm not doing any glass or any wall thicknesses. I did radius the front edge of this bottle part. You can see I'm getting a nice highlight here along that. So I made that decision because I wanted to put that radius up on the closure and I wanted to make sure it cleared. I had enough room for that to clear. So it looks pretty good. All right, so in the next tutorial, I'm going to talk about this high heel stiletto thing in the back and how I'm going to build that with these fluted little details in there. I'm going to do a loft function on that. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial.